and welcome to the Owensboro Board of Commissioners special called meeting February 12, 2019. At this time, I will ask our City Clerk, Beth Cecil, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jeff Sanford.
Here.
Commissioner Larry Conder.
Here.
Mayor Tom Watson.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Larry Maglaner.
Here.
And Commissioner Pam Smithroyd is out on business.
Okay, at this time, I'll ask you to please stand, and we'll ask Commissioner Larry Conder to please give us the invocation and pledge.
Thank you, Mayor. Please pray with me or silent meditation, whichever may be your choice. Dear Lord, you created each person that they might need each other, and thus they might be all knitted more closely together in the bonds of brotherly affection. We must delight in each other, make each other's conditions our own, rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and our community as to the members of the same body, which is both what we seek and what we honor around our table of thanksgiving. I ask you to please bless this commission. As always, touch their minds, touch their hearts, and touch their souls, that we do the things that we know that you task us to do. I ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Now the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Larry. Conder, Commissioner. Item number 4 on the agenda is it's a presentation, and it's my honor to read a proclamation for the OBKY ACES Awareness, Resilience, and Empowerment Proclamation. Whereas adverse childhood experiences, acronym ACES, such as witnessing or being a victim of abuse, neglect, having a parent, or living with someone who suffers from substance abuse or mental illness, or is incarcerated, economic insecurity, domestic or neighborhood violence, or death of a parent or guardian, are harmful, traumatic events that happen during childhood. And whereas expert studies in the field related to child development and adult physical and mental health prove that ACEs create toxic stress with lasting consequences and significantly increases the risk of chronic disease, obesity, mental illness, substance abuse, incarceration, becoming a victim of violence, and even premature death. And whereas Kentucky ranks 43rd in the United States for children with ACEs scores of 2 or more, which are detrimental to long-term health and well-being. However, children who experience ACEs are not irreparably damaged. Resilience is promoted with a kind and caring adult. And whereas by working together as a caring community to promote trauma-informed care, the negative effects of ACEs can be reduced and resiliency can be built through safe, stable, and nurturing relationships. And whereas the City of Owensboro is committed to promoting the ability of children and adults to thrive, encourages all citizens to be kind and to look at one another with a lens of compassion, less with what is wrong with you and more with what has happened to you. Now therefore I, Thomas H. Watson, Mayor of the City of Owensboro, do hereby proclaim 2019 as the OBKY ACES Awareness for Resilience and Empowerment Year in the City of Owensboro, and I encourage my fellow citizens to learn more about how ACEs affect our families and our community, and to join the efforts to create a resilient OBKY for the betterment of all our community. So, wonder who asked me to do this? Is somebody here? Oh, there she is, Rosemary. Okay, how about we present? Would you like to say something first? Not everybody gets to speak. We've got UKs at 6 tonight, don't forget.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. And we have several people from the organizations within the community, because this really is a community-wide event with organizations and businesses and services that are really trying to come together, make our community aware of adverse childhood experiences. As a director of CASA, I see the effect every day of child abuse, neglect, domestic violence, but we see it in our community with increased health risks and unemployment, lost wages. So it affects every citizen in Owensboro, not just people that deal with the heart issues, but people that actually care about how their taxes are spent, how many people are in jail, our crime rate, that kind of thing. They're all connected. And what is so impactful about learning about adverse childhood experiences is that now the scientists can prove, more than it making you sad that these things happen, that these actually change the physical and physiological DNA of children. So we can do things in our community to show the state and the world that we care about our kids and we can make a difference. So I think the more that people learn about adverse childhood experiences, and that's why we've come together as Spark ODCs, because we know that we can show Kentucky how it's done.
Okay, anybody else is welcome to speak. I was only kidding.
That's it? Thank you.
Is that it? Okay, well, we're going to come down and present this.
Yeah, we got a whole crew.
Bring your whole crew if you want to. We are, as a community, very fortunate to have you all taking this thing head on, because those of us that have seen children that have been, for a better term, neglected, know exactly what you're talking about. So thank you for what you do for our community. Okay. Nate, can you do something better than what we just did?
Probably not, man.
I didn't think so. Item 4B is the Tax Increment Financing District 101.
Thank you, Mayor. The Commission had previously requested periodic updates on the TIF, but until such point where we are receiving state revenues back, there's really not a whole lot to report. With the new commission in place for this year, we thought it good to provide sort of a TIF 101 with some update. And Mayor, actually the presentation will be done by Angela Hamrick, so I would ask you to acknowledge her for the presentation.
I acknowledge you, Angela Hamrick.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
We're here to give an update as well as an overview of our two tax increment financing projects referred to as TIFs. So you'll hear the word TIF or the acronym TIF used quite frequently. For those in our viewing audience who may not be familiar with the TIFs, we can look at the basics. So what is a TIF? Basically, a TIF is a financial economic development tool. It's provided to the city by the state, and it helps the city to finance needed infrastructure improvements. So this incentive goes toward public infrastructure. The state will reimburse a specified amount to the city. Specified amount to the city for approved public infrastructure within a certain area. So that's key too, is that there's just a certain predetermined area, and we call that our TIF footprint. There's three main premises that you might want to think about when you think about the TIF, and that's what we call the footprint, which is the area that is put together by the city and our consultants, and we present that to the state, and they have their consultants, and so there's just a determined geographical area, and we have two. So if you want to look at your screens, and Beth, if you'll put up the first PowerPoint. The footprint, as I said, must be established by the city and approved by the state. What exactly does a TIF footprint boundary do? It establishes the parameters within which the revenues that are generated and within which the TIF monies are spent. By example, I was asked by a fellow citizen, why can't you use TIF dollars or revenue from the state to take down or demo Gabe's Tower? Well, the Gabe's Tower is not in our predetermined TIF footprint. We've got two TIF footprints, and we'll look at these areas. Here on the screen is the first TIF footprint. That's our Gateway 54 TIF area. And you'll see the brightly colored areas. That's the Gateway area where Hayden Road goes through there. There's going to be a theater, hotel, lots of shopping. The pink is going to be our green belt. The bigger square at the top is going to be a wastewater treatment plant. Up to the upper left is going to be some expansion capacity to our Ragu treatment plant. So in order for the state to approve this, they have to see that there's economic development, that this grows the city, henceforth grows the state. So the state then they are glad to help incentivize this activity. So the next area that we have is our downtown TIF footprint. So this picture is not quite as clear to see, but you can see it starts over at the bridge and it goes to the left. You'll see a blue line closer to the river, and that's our state increment area, wherein revenues generated within that area will go toward the state reimbursement to the city. The black larger line around is what we call our local increment, and so we also, part of our state TIF also includes local increment as well. So that's the two areas that make up this city's TIF footprints. The second main premise that I mentioned is our reimbursement, and that's based on projected economic development analyses provided to the state by the city. The state then establishes a maximum reimbursement amount to be paid to the city. In our case, the maximum amount that the state will reimburse for Gateway 54 is $20.5 million. And that's monies from just the state. And we'll talk about what incremental dollars are here in a bit. And then the downtown, the state has set a maximum reimbursement amount of $24.5 million. The reimbursement period will last a maximum of 20 years. So the reimbursements will terminate on the sooner of reaching the maximum dollar approved amount or reaching the 20-year mark, whichever comes first. How are the TIF reimbursements accounted for? So I've got a very simplistic graph here that will show how these TIF monies are accounted for. The city will set up a special district TIF fund. We'll set one up for downtown. We'll set one up for the Gateway. So we'll keep the money separate. And what goes into the special district TIF fund will be the monies from the city general fund, where I mentioned we'll have a local increment that accompanies the state increment. So if you'll see to the left of your screen, you'll see at the bottom I've got incremental revenue. What that means is that we had to measure all the revenues generated in each of those two TIF footprints. That's our baseline. That's what we currently generated in 2015. So when we go to activate our TIF, meaning when we start reimbursement period from the state, we can only ask the state for incremental amounts. So if a particular area had $1 million in sales tax, and so in 2018, which is our activation period, say it's $2 million. So really only our incremental amount's $1 million, and they'll give us 80% of that. We don't get the whole $2 million. So that's what incremental revenue is. Now, by rules of the TIF, 80% of this incremental amount will feed into our special district TIF funds. And so the state operates the same way. And you'll see that, they measure their incremental revenues in 2015, and then they'll look at the incremental amount in 18, and then they'll take 80% of that, and they'll write a check to the city of Owensboro. They'll write a check to us for the 54 TIF, and they'll write a check for the downtown TIF. And like I said, we'll keep those monies separate. Now, the type of funds that you'll see at the top there on the general fund, I've got OCC, NP, and PT. That OCC is our occupational, which is our payroll withholding. Net profits is our local income tax. PT is the local property tax. Over on the state side, it's a little bit different mixture. You've got their payroll withholding, their property tax, and their sales tax. They'll give us a portion of that back. So that's how the reimbursement amount is derived. Now, the third main premise of a TIF is the payouts. And when I mean payouts, I'm talking about the red arrow that comes down, and that's monies that we will be distributing from our special district TIF funds. And we will be using those monies to fund projects that were approved by the state. And I've got just a sampling of those at the bottom, and that's our new parking garage downtown. The plan there is, that the city issued bonds to build that parking garage, and we've started our activation period. We'll start getting reimbursements from the state and from ourselves as part of the TIF, and we'll start paying the debt service on that. So those funds will pay for our parking garage, the Bluegrass Museum, the treatment plant on 54, the Gateway Road, the Hayden Road that goes through that development and other approved projects. So, and that's how the money comes out of that fund. So that's just a basic overview of how the funds flow. Now, an update on our activities. And like Nate alluded to earlier, we've not received any funds yet. We've not even applied for our refunding at this point. But the activation date, as I said, has been selected. We selected a date of January 1, 2018 for both TIFs. That means the City Finance Department, we're collecting revenues generated and received in the calendar year 2018. So for all the businesses in these areas, we're having to work with these people, and we're very appreciative of their time and efforts, because it's time and effort on their part to give us that information so that we can collect it to submit to the state. And then what data is collected, I covered that earlier. The data collected includes state and local payroll withholding. And the state rates went up for payroll withholding, so that works good for us. Sales tax, you got more services that the state is applying sales tax to. So those tax changes has worked to our benefit as far as incremental revenues. And then we got state and local property tax, local net profit, and then the state sales tax. The timing of the reporting and reimbursement, the city will submit the data report for our 2018 incremental revenues. It's on a calendar year basis. We'll send that to the state in the spring of 2019. The state will audit the data, and then they'll reimburse the city. We hope to get that within 90 days, but it could be 6 months or longer. So we'll keep our fingers crossed on that. This is my last update. We did just get our audit done for the $20 million minimum investment. The TIF rules, the statute requires the city to do a series of 3 different audits, and we have done the first one, and this was the biggest threshold. There has to be a $20 million capital investment spend in each of the TIF areas, and we've reached that threshold. We have had that audited, and that audit report has been submitted to the state. We'll have 2 more audits. One will be done when all the public infrastructure in each TIF area is completed, and then a 3rd audit when all of the planned capital investment is completed. So, and this first audit had to be done before we could activate, before we could start asking for reimbursement. So, in a nutshell, and boiled down, that's our TIFs. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to try and answer.
Any questions from the dais? Commissioner Condor.
Thank you, Mayor. Angela, I'm sure you probably have like spreadsheets this wide and that long that go along with this, but with the categories of funding, the occupational tax, net profit, and property taxes, from both the city and the state, which one has the most impact on a TIF success? Which one of those revenue streams would you say?
Well, obviously, it's going to be the state because they have higher rates.
Sure.
But
Well, there you
yes,
go.
I have that information here in front of me. Now, Gateway 54, excuse me, is going to be basically retail. So that speaks to sales tax, right? And so that's going to be the biggest revenue generator there, is going to be that category there. Now, downtown, sales tax, not as much. It's going to be the withholding tax is going to be the bigger generator downtown. And you had asked about construction being a big generator. In construction, you're correct when you said that earlier. As far as economic impact, construction is key. Because when there's construction, it creates a new building and it's more economic opportunity, bigger fiscal impact. So construction is key.
So basically, it looks like downtown, you need people really working to make that, because it is one of the biggest components of that funding. On Gateway, it's retail sales
That's
over a long period of time.
correct. Now, the sales tax downtown is not so very far behind from the withholding because of the hotels.
Okay.
We'll have 3 hotels, and the room tax that the state collects on those 3 hotels will be a very good revenue generator for the city.
Thank you, Angela.
You're
Very
welcome.
good.
So it's pretty critical we get that third hotel going in, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Those hotels are good revenue generators for the TIFs.
Well, I can't ask you any critical questions because I don't have any. But I do know that the folks that help us with Commonwealth have said by far you and your group are the best they've worked with so far and are on top of it better than anybody they've had. And if you look at the history of tax increment financing districts, it has not been good, and it has not been good in most people's opinion because of the local folks that couldn't keep up with what needed to be kept up with so that all these little pockets get filled. But Angela Hamrick and her group are way ahead of the game, and the community wants to thank you for that.
I appreciate that, and I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Danae Galloway in our audience.
Recognize
our
her.
deputy
There she
director.
is. Stand up, Renee.
She I know she's put untold hours in down in the weeds with the numbers and crunching and so forth. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize her. She's here, and I'm appreciative of her.
Anybody else want to volunteer to get in on this down in the weed stuff? Not me.
It's a lot of work.
Oh,
I
my
won't lie.
goodness. I leave at 6 o'clock or so. Her car's always still there. So is Danae. Say goodbye to her on the way out. They're really doing a tremendous job for us, and we're very appreciative. Okay. Sorry you got to follow this, Leland, but Bluegrass Hall of Fame music update.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner.
You're welcome.
Not sure I can follow that with such beauty as Angela does it.
Yeah. That's for
Anyway,
sure.
we'll give it a whirl. The International Bluegrass Music Museum is one that began, as a dream many years ago for some. And we had design that began in 2014. 2 short years later, in 2016, on one of the hottest days I can remember, we stood out in that sun and broke ground on that project and just melted in the sun. It didn't come without its headaches along the way to a grand opening in 2018 in October, which everyone enjoyed. But the good news is that the $15.3 million budget that was set aside for that, we came in $266,000 under budget. So that will be divided a third and 2/3 to the Bluegrass and 2/3 to the city, to the tune of about $175,000 come back to the city coffers. So I have to thank Wayne Shelton, Kevin Collian as well for their efforts, the engineering team there, keeping that project on track, Ted Lally for his efforts, Angela for keeping our finances going as well. But I think it goes to Mr. Jocelyn and his staff for keeping that place bustling since its grand opening, and it's definitely a jewel in the crown of our downtown, and it's something I think everybody's proud to have. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
I just have one question. They couldn't find a restaurant, and we had all that stuff. What's going on in the 3rd floor of the museum at this point in time?
The 3rd floor area has been finished out, and it can be rented for events, and they have had quite a few events in there here since they finished that, so it's quite successful.
And that was paid for by?
Museum.
Museum, okay. All right.
It's got an excellent view if anybody is interested in the area. I know
talked to a few people about utilizing it, but it's a beautiful view.
You got elevator works, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. All right, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Leland. Next item on the agenda is the city project list. Nate Pagan, city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The project list is in your packet. Staff or I would be happy to answer any questions from the commission.
I have one. My favorite item is the dog park. And it says acquisition of needed equipment. And what does that mean exactly? I thought we were just building a fence around it. Amanda.
Hi, Mayor. Amanda Rogers, Director of Parks and Rec. Basically, the equipment we need are just basic things like trash cans, the mitt holders, and benches. And a water fountain, of course.
For the dog?
And for you, sir.
Okay, both of them. Okay. Just checking. Thank you. It just, it was my understanding we were putting a chain link fence around it, and that was the last that I'd heard, but we got a trash cans.
Some basic amenities, yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Nothing fancy.
I don't know. Pretty fancy for pups, isn't it? They got their own water fountain, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, it'll be very similar to what we have along the green belt.
On the green belt?
so
Okay.
Just like that, yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody?
One comment, please.
Do you have a comment, Commissioner Condor?
Please.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Triplet Twist, could Miss Abby Shelton be able to give us maybe a quick update on the conclusion of that project out there and what maybe we could be looking forward to in the next, 6 months?
No.
Please, oh, come on.
Busy.
Mayor and Commissioners, Abby Shelton, Community Development Director for the City of Owensboro. Currently, we are wrapping up numbers in Triplet Twist and have actually halted projects because we are in the midst of exterior repairs for homeowners. Gabe Shopping Center is getting a facelift. We've hit a few snags with the engineering, so we're back to the drawing board. It's been stagnant for a little bit, but hang with us because we're trying to fix that and get back into the weeds with that. Currently, staff is working on putting together a plan for the northwest area. We are going to be, in 2020, focusing on the northernmost and west area of town to infiltrate with CDBG and home funds through exterior repairs, exterior rehabs. It's in need of a lot of TLC, so we're putting our heads together, making sure we can assess correctly and make sure the opportunities are there for investors and homeowners alike.
You got a cool name for that project yet?
Not yet, sir.
No, yeah, okay. Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a question about Ms. Rogers. Working with LD&D to complete cost analysis for renovation and improvement options, annual maintenance and replacement costs for these options are being analyzed. Will this be ready before you present your budget for the next year?
That is my intent. We've gotten initial numbers back, and city manager and I have sat down and gone through those and looked at how we would prioritize work and what we believe staff's suggestions should be. So I would anticipate that you will be hearing from him fairly shortly on some additional information. So I would like to think that we would put whatever that determination is in our budget for the next year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is business. Consider personnel appointment. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Aaron Brown, probationary, full-time, non-civil service, promotional appointment to crew leader with the street department effective February 17th, 2019. And John Nance, probationary, full-time, non-civil service appointment to equipment operator with the grounds department effective February 17th.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve these probationary status. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 5B, I will make a motion to go into closed session under KRS 61.8101B to discuss the acquisition or sale of property under KRS 61.810 to discuss proposed or pending litigation. Could I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. We do not anticipate any decisions to be made. So at this time, we will adjourn to closed session. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate you. Thanks, staff.